Most people believe that to gain respect and authority, one must speak loudly, impose presence, or achieve high social status. But what if I told you that true leaders, those who truly inspire and impact, don't need grand speeches? Stoicism teaches that real strength lies in the silence of actions, in unwavering posture, and in unshakable coherence. While many waste energy trying to impress, those who truly master their lives don't bother with appearances, they simply are. We live in a world where external validation has become a form of currency. Likes, compliments, and recognition have turned into an addiction, leading many to shape their identities just to please others. But here's the brutal truth. Those who constantly seek reassurance never had real authority in the first place. Discipline, resilience, and self-control are the trademarks of those who refuse to bend to others' opinions. Have you ever stopped to think about how much energy you waste trying to be accepted by people who may not even truly respect you? In this video, you'll learn how to apply Stoic principles to command respect without saying a single word. We'll discuss dignity, integrity, and healthy boundaries, elements that naturally make someone admired. But beware. What you're about to learn may completely change how you see yourself and how others perceive you. Are you ready to discover the ultimate secret to true authority? Talking is easy. Anyone can craft a beautiful speech about discipline, integrity, or self-respect. But what truly sets people of value apart is how they act. In Stoicism, the real measure of character isn't found in promises or empty words, but in daily conduct. A person who lives according to their principles doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Their posture speaks for itself. Imagine someone who constantly talks about self-control but loses their temper at the slightest inconvenience. Their words lose all weight because their actions contradict their message. In the end, consistent actions are what build respect and authority. The problem is that many people want recognition without real effort. They want to be seen as disciplined but avoid responsibilities. They desire respect but fail to cultivate self-respect. And this is where a key Stoic principle comes in. True authority is born from self-awareness and practice, not from a need for external approval. No one needs to go around saying they're resilient. Just act resilient in difficult moments. Want to be known as a trustworthy person? Keep your word. Want to be respected? Treat others with dignity and firmness without constantly trying to prove yourself. A simple example. A true leader doesn't need to say they are a leader. They inspire and guide through example. Think of someone you admire. Chances are they don't spend their time bragging about their achievements. They simply live their values. And because of that, they earn respect naturally. So here's the big question. Do your actions reflect the person you truly want to be? If not, maybe it's time to align your behavior with your principles. Because at the end of the day, what's the point of preaching integrity if you don't live with integrity? And that leads us to another fundamental point. The need to impress others can be one of the biggest obstacles for those seeking authenticity. In Stoicism, true self-esteem doesn't come from material possessions, status, or likes on social media, but from how one conducts themselves daily. Dignity is not in what you wear, the car you drive, or the amount of money in your account. It lies in self-respect and the alignment between words and actions. Those who truly value themselves don't need external validation to feel complete. Their presence alone conveys strength without the need for effort. Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and automatically draw attention without exaggeration? It's because dignity and self-confidence radiate through their gestures, tone of voice, and posture. This isn't arrogance, but a quiet security that comes from self-control and a deep understanding of one's worth. On the other hand, those who constantly seek approval become prisoners of others' opinions, shaping themselves according to external expectations and losing their authenticity in the process. So how can you apply this in real life? Simple. Before worrying about others' opinions, ask yourself if you respect yourself. Are you acting with integrity? Are your values reflected in your decisions? Instead of seeking approval, focus on building something solid within yourself. When dignity becomes a non-negotiable principle, the need to prove anything disappears, and this leads us to an even deeper point. If your self-esteem depends on the validation of others, then you will never truly have control over it. Stoicism teaches that true worth is not found in follower counts, compliments, or external recognition, but in how we see ourselves. When someone bases their identity on the approval of others, they become a prisoner of external expectations, always seeking applause to feel relevant. But the truth is, self-control and resilience only develop when we learn to look inward rather than outward. A practical example, imagine two people who lose their jobs. One falls into despair because their self-worth was tied to their job title. The other sees it as an opportunity to grow, knowing that their value extends beyond a name badge. What sets them apart? A deeper understanding of their true self. Those who know themselves and respect their journey don't panic in the face of obstacles. Instead of worrying about what others think, they maintain their dignity and act with integrity to rebuild their path. So how can you strengthen this mindset? Simple. Stop comparing yourself to others and focus on what is within your control. Want to improve your self-esteem? Develop real skills, practice discipline, and take care of your mind. Reading ancient philosophy can help build a solid foundation. Books like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius or Letters to Lucilius by Seneca offer powerful reflections on self-awareness. When you start trusting yourself, you no longer need to chase validation. And this brings us to an essential point. If you don't set your own boundaries, others will do it for you. Stoicism teaches that self-respect begins when we learn to say enough to situations and people that do not add value to our lives. Setting healthy boundaries doesn't mean being rude or arrogant. It means valuing your time, energy, and well-being. Many people mistake kindness for permissiveness and end up tolerating behaviors that drain their peace. But those who truly have self-control and dignity know their limits and do not compromise on what is essential. A practical example. Imagine someone who always gives in to others' demands, whether at work, in friendships, or in relationships. This person ends up exhausted, trying to please everyone while sacrificing their own happiness. Now, compare them to someone who sets boundaries with clarity and firmness. This person is respected because they demonstrate self-respect. If a boss unfairly overloads them with tasks, they don't passively accept it. If a friend only appears when they need something, they don't allow themselves to be used. This isn't about being inflexible, but about understanding what is healthy and sustainable. Want to apply this in your life? Start small. If you feel someone has crossed a line, express it calmly but firmly. You don't need to over-explain or apologize for prioritizing yourself. Stoic philosophy teaches that true freedom comes from self-control, and knowing when to say no is part of that process. After all, how can you expect respect from others if you don't respect yourself? And speaking of respect, not everyone deserves a place in your life. Stoicism teaches that being selective about who you allow into your circle is a sign of intelligence and self-respect. Some people bring growth and inspiration, while others only drain your energy and distract you from your path. If you give your time and attention to just anyone, you end up sacrificing your peace and compromising your journey. Discipline also means knowing where to invest your emotional and mental energy. Think of an experienced investor. They don't put money into just any opportunity. They analyze, research, and only invest where they see potential for growth. The same principle applies to relationships. If you give your attention indiscriminately, you'll end up surrounded by people who don't share your values and only want something from you. People who constantly complain, always demand, but never offer anything of value are an invisible burden. And once you recognize this, you start to understand the importance of being selective. But how do you put this into practice? Simple. Start observing patterns. Who truly supports you and who only shows up when they need something? Who respects your time and who demands your attention as if it were a right? Learning to close some doors is essential to making room for what truly matters. And speaking of actions that speak louder than words, words can be captivating, but actions reveal the truth. Stoicism teaches that we should judge people by what they do, not by what they say. How many times has someone promised to change, only to keep repeating the same mistakes? How often have inspiring speeches turned out to be empty when put to the test? Integrity is not measured by intentions or declarations, but by the consistency between words and actions. Those who truly have self-control and discipline act with consistency without needing to announce their virtues. Imagine a boss who talks about teamwork but ignores the struggles of their employees, or a friend who swears loyalty but disappears when you need them. These types of people don't deserve your trust. On the other hand, there are those who don't make grand promises but demonstrate commitment through small gestures. A mentor who guides without expecting anything in return. A colleague who offers help without ulterior motives. A partner who acts with integrity even when no one is watching. These are the actions that reveal true character. Want to develop a sharper perspective? Start paying attention to small inconsistencies. Who constantly makes promises but never follows through? Who calls themselves a friend but vanishes in difficult moments? And more importantly, do your own actions reflect what you preach? Stoicism teaches that we should hold others to high standards, but ourselves to even higher ones. And once you learn to see beyond words, it becomes easier to make one of the most important decisions. Not every battle is worth fighting. Stoicism teaches that sometimes the wisest decision is simply to walk away. Many people insist on staying in relationships, jobs, or situations that drain their energy, simply out of fear of change or attachment to the familiar. But the truth is, staying where there is no respect, dignity, or growth is a waste of life. Self-control and self-respect are directly linked to the ability to recognize when something no longer serves you. A classic example. Imagine someone working in a toxic environment where they are constantly undervalued and humiliated. They stay, believing that one day they'll be recognized or that things will change. But time passes, and the reality remains the same. The same happens with friendships and relationships. Sometimes insisting is not an act of strength, but of weakness. Knowing when to walk away takes courage, because it means letting go of the familiar in search of something that truly aligns with you. So, how do you know when to step away? Observe the patterns. Do you constantly feel disrespected? Are your boundaries ignored? Does the environment drain your energy more than it fosters growth? If the answer is yes, Stoicism teaches that leaving is not cowardice, but an act of intelligence and self-respect. After all, no one can walk a path of authenticity while being trapped in what no longer represents them. And that brings us to an essential question. Saying no is one of the most powerful acts of self-control and dignity a person can practice. Stoicism teaches that those who don't know how to say no become prisoners of other people's demands. Many fear declining requests because they don't want to disappoint or miss out on opportunities, but in the end, they accumulate responsibilities that don't align with them. The truth is, every time we say yes to something we don't want, we are saying no to ourselves. And those who fail to set boundaries will eventually lose respect from others and from themselves. Think of a professional who constantly takes on extra tasks, afraid of seeming unavailable. Over time, they become overwhelmed, exhausted, and, ironically, less valued. The same applies to relationships. Someone who never sets limits will be treated as an option, not a priority. A well-placed no demonstrates integrity and self-respect. If something goes against your principles or disturbs your peace, refusing isn't rudeness. It's a statement of personal value. So how do you apply this in real life? Before accepting anything, ask yourself, is this aligned with what I want for my life? If the answer is no, have the courage to decline, without guilt and without excessive explanations. A simple "I can't" or "I'm not available" is enough. Stoicism teaches that true power doesn't come from pleasing everyone, but from staying loyal to your values. And this leads us to another essential point. Not everything that glitters is gold, and not every piece of information should be accepted without question. Stoicism teaches that independent thinking is one of the greatest forms of self-control and self-respect. In a world where everyone has an opinion about everything, those who fail to develop critical thinking are easily manipulated. This applies to relationships, business opportunities, and even well-intentioned advice. People who blindly trust promises or get carried away by first impressions are at high risk of disappointment. Think of someone who falls for financial scams because they believed in an offer that was too good to be true. Or someone who enters a relationship without noticing the red flags, only to later be surprised by toxic behavior. Healthy skepticism doesn't mean being overly distrustful. It means carefully analyzing situations before committing. Instead of believing only what is said, observe what is done. Instead of accepting an opportunity without question, investigate the consequences. Having this filter is a sign of intelligence and self-respect. So how do you develop this critical mindset? Ask yourself, does this make sense? Has this person proven to be reliable before? What's the real intention behind this? Reading ancient philosophy can help strengthen analytical thinking. Books like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius teach the importance of reflecting before acting. When you learn to question before making decisions, you avoid regrets and maintain your dignity intact. And this connects to something even deeper. The pursuit of perfection is a trap. Stoicism teaches that no one is flawless and that true strength lies in accepting our weaknesses and growing from them. Many people are overly self-critical, believing they will only be worthy of respect if they are perfect. But the reality is that authenticity and self-respect emerge when we stop trying to be an idealized version of ourselves and instead focus on evolving within our own limitations. Resilience does not come from the absence of mistakes, but from the ability to learn from them. Imagine an athlete who loses a competition and instead of dwelling on failure, analyzes what they can improve. Or a professional who receives criticism and rather than feeling defeated, uses the feedback to grow. People like this understand that excellence is not about never failing, but about how they handle failure. Those who seek external approval and try to hide their imperfections become prisoners of their own fear. But those who accept their vulnerabilities with dignity become truly free. So, how can you apply this in daily life? Instead of avoiding challenges out of fear of failure, face them as opportunities for growth. Instead of comparing yourself to others, focus on your own progress. Stoicism teaches that self-love begins when we stop judging ourselves so harshly and start treating ourselves with the same compassion we offer to others. And this leads us to one of the biggest mistakes anyone can make. Chasing after someone who doesn't want to be in your life is a waste of energy and dignity. Stoicism teaches that true self-control lies in accepting reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. When someone pulls away, insisting won't change the outcome, it only prolongs the suffering. People come and go, and clinging to those who have already chosen to leave is a way of ignoring your own worth. Self-respect demands the courage to move forward without relying on external validation. Think of someone who goes through a breakup and spends months trying to win the other person back, humiliating themselves and accepting crumbs of attention. Or someone who keeps chasing one-sided friendships, always giving more than they receive. This behavior only reinforces low self-esteem and lack of integrity. When someone wants to be in your life, they stay without you having to beg. Those who value themselves don't chase because they know their presence is a privilege, not an obligation for others. How do you apply this in real life? Simple. If someone wants to leave, let them go. Instead of wasting energy trying to convince people to stay, invest in yourself. Stoicism teaches that resilience comes from accepting loss as part of the journey and continuing to build your own path. And this leads us to a fundamental principle for living with authenticity. Nothing destroys self-respect more than living in contradiction with what you believe in. Stoicism teaches that true dignity isn't found in words, but in the alignment between words and actions. Many people adjust their values just to fit in with what others expect, sacrificing their authenticity in exchange for acceptance. But those with self-control and integrity don't sell themselves for approval. Their commitment is not to pleasing the world, but to living in a way that aligns with what they truly believe is right. A practical example. Imagine someone who claims to value discipline but never follows through on their own commitments. Or someone who preaches honesty but acts dishonestly whenever it's convenient. These small inconsistencies, no matter how subtle, erode self-esteem and self-trust. Now, think of someone who keeps their word even when no one is watching, who respects their own boundaries, and who isn't swayed by external pressures. That kind of person earns respect effortlessly, without needing to demand it. Want to apply this in your daily life? Start by clearly defining your core values. What is non-negotiable for you? Honesty, discipline, respect? Then analyze if your actions truly reflect these principles. Stoicism teaches that living with authenticity is the foundation for inner peace and self-respect. And when this becomes a habit, the need to prove anything to others simply disappears. Now that you understand that true authority isn't built with words, but with actions, the question is, are you ready to apply this in your life? Stoicism teaches that discipline, self-control, and authenticity are the pillars of a strong and respectable presence. But absorbing this knowledge is useless if you continue to let others define your worth. So ask yourself, are you truly living according to your principles, or are you still seeking approval from those who add nothing to your journey? Reflect on this. How many times have you accepted less than you deserve out of fear of displeasing others? How many times have you failed to set healthy boundaries just to avoid conflict? Integrity isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about standing firm in the face of it. It's about how you conduct yourself when no one is watching. So from now on, make a commitment to yourself. Live according to your values and let respect come as a natural consequence. If this content resonated with you, don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep following videos that will transform your mindset. Here, you'll learn to live with more dignity, purpose, and self-respect. Now tell me, which of these principles do you already apply in your life, and which one do you still need to improve? Let's discuss it in the comments.